Season 4, episode 27 of the Decoded podcast. I tried to use my good mic today. It didn't work. And then, so that was the first fail of the day. And you and I were just talking about opening the secret doors of the EDU system to the world. Okay, so let me
shape it.
Let me shape it. Let me add some flavor to this. People on the outside don't truly understand what happens inside. They don't. So for every human that's gone to public school, they think that they could walk in and do a teacher's job. They think that they know how everything works in the schools, but they don't. And I have a great example of this this lack of true understanding. So this school year, because we have difficulty staffing our buildings because we just don't have enough bodies to deal with how many people are away from school. Some of our lunch hour supervisors at my school have been asked, can you jump into this class for the morning or for the afternoon? And they say yes, and they come in. And some of these lunch hour supervisors are parents of students in the building. So they're around, they do lunch hour supervision, they get kids, they see kids acting up, they see kids following instructions, but they're catching kids at lunchtime, right? So there's no real instruction going on. Well, then you throw them into a classroom where they have to work with different students. Some have behavior needs, some have educational needs, some have social needs. Like it runs the gamut, right? I've had one or two of them say to me, "Holy cow, does this happen every day?" I'm like, "Yeah, every day, all day." And they kind of look at you like, well, they look at you with that confused look of, does everybody know that this happens? Number one. Do you have support? Number two. Number three, how have you not lost your mind? And it's like, I don't know about other people, but I don't answer those questions directly. I just say, this is the reality, and you're here with me, and this is what I'm politely asking you to do with this student. So, like, make it happen and let me know while I'm teaching the class. You let me know what you need. Do you need support? Do you need resources? Like, what do you need to make this happen? And it's interesting. This whole idea is interesting because to me, it's like the doors of education open, public education open up to these people, and they actually get to see what's behind the door. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not good, and I feel like people don't want to talk about this. People don't want to talk about this, but guess what? You and I can talk about this, and we can be professional, we can be respectful. There's a difference between talking about negative situations and really being down in the dumps and not looking at it as something that we need to work on. We need to operate in as smooth a fashion as we can. There's a difference between that, speaking positively, and then speaking negatively. But it's funny, people in general within the system don't want the people outside of the system to really see what happens inside. So sometimes you will have a student that refuses to do any work, that likes to swear out loud, maybe throw things, maybe start conflicts in the room just to get things going. That happens. We don't talk about that every day, but it happens. And when it does happen, it's my opinion that educators then take the time to build a relationship with these students, right? To understand their needs, to understand what meets their needs in a positive way. And then you work in that direction. You work in that direction to build capacity, to build support, to build relationship. So when you have somebody walk in off the street that has no relationship with some of these students, it becomes stressful for everybody involved. It is stressful for the student because they're like, I had one student in particular that would literally say to the EA or to the supply EA, the occasional EA, what are you doing here? Where's my EA? So right away they go from 0 to 100. They're pissed. And because they're relationship people, they're like, what's going on here? That's number one. Number two, you've got the teacher. Like, I'm like, oh, great. This is great. I don't need this today. And then you try to find ways to make sure fires don't start. So you're already off kilter because you had a plan, but now you got to shift. Because if you follow your plan, you're going to have conflict in the room because you don't have the people working with the student that know the student. And then you've got the person who comes in from the outside who's like, what have I gotten myself into? What do I do here? This happens. And it was happening quite often in the fall, but it's not happening anymore because we don't have people to come into the building and help. So if people are missing from the building, admin finds a way to staff classrooms, and then everybody moves forward. So, no prep time, or um, you lose EA support here and there to make sure that other people are getting it. And everything's being held together with Scotch tape, which isn't very strong and can break apart quite easily. That's what happens when you open the doors. Now, hey, here's the flip side, right? You also get to see all kinds of amazing things. So it's not all negative. But the funny thing is nobody ever really wants to talk about the negative. They just want to look at the positive. Well, I got a little surprise for you. Both of them live behind those doors. And I tweeted this thing out about wellness yesterday. You made a comment about it, this article that I found, and I thought it was right on in the way that it explained a couple of things people don't talk about when it comes to wellness. And you have to excuse me, I don't have the article in front of me, but one of those things was to acknowledge the negative. Don't just pretend it's not there, because that's going to throw you into a psychological spiral that you don't want to deal with, that you may not be strong enough to deal with right now. I know my style. I like to know where the negatives are, where the holes are. So I try not to step in them all day. I don't just keep marching around thinking everything's good, then I fall in these holes. I know where they are. I acknowledge them, and then I move forward. So you open up those doors, those education doors to the outside world, and be prepared, because sometimes some of these people are going to look at the negative and say, how come this is here? How come nobody ever talks about this? Or they keep the secret, so to speak, right? Now they're part of the club. So they just deal with it, but they don't walk around talking about it. That's been amplified with COVID in my experience, because now people aren't, you can't find supply EAs, you can't find supply teachers. I don't see them at my school anymore. My wife doesn't see them often at her school either. So that's what I wanted to kick off with. Thanks for that chat before we started, because it got me thinking about the things that make me tired in a bad way, right? So like, for all the awesome things I do with my students, I feel tired, but I feel like it's an energized tired. It's like, you're tired, but it was worth it. Every second was worth it. And then you've got the negative tired, where you're tired and you just want to walk away, and you don't want to come back for a while because you need to rest. You need to do something to re-energize. You need to refocus. COVID has had a lot of fun with that. And now that we've come up to the 1 year, uh, a year since, it was announced that we were in a pandemic, I laugh because I think of the people that said, oh, don't worry, this will be over in a few months. Like, well, I guess you don't understand science, where now people are now being vaccinated. It's been a year. And for Ontario teachers, it's not happening anytime soon. They keep saying it will. Okay, well, I'll believe it when it happens. So that's where I'm landing this morning, Chris.
the whole avoiding the negative. I think sometimes it might even be designing by ignoring the negative. And that's where some of the interesting conversations kind of happen, where it's not just that it was kind of capped or pushed away or pushed off. It's that you can actually, and this will come out in the paperwork afterwards. This will come out in the sort of like the health data of different schools. Like it's all going to, it will come out. Will it come out in time to sort of effectively support anybody right now? Probably not. But this will all come out. This will all come out. I don't know what the spark will be to bring it out. I think it's interesting that even as you and I have a habit of, kind of opening up some of those spaces. I mean, our intention with Decoded was to talk about some of the stuff that we felt we couldn't engage in these conversations, maybe with our peers, maybe with leadership. Maybe we just couldn't find the conversations happening in the EDU pod sphere out there. So I think that was a part of my intention with Decoded, was to talk about the stuff that is kind of happening beside, inside, and around education, which also includes our own intersections, right? As dads and men and friends. That even with that being said, though, we still haven't revealed all the stuff that goes on. Like we still, even with this podcast, and we're not doing investigative journalism on our own jobs. I think we do creep up to some topics. We code and we stealth, and we sort of touch on and mention. And I wish I felt more comfortable. It's like, I feel it's funny because you'll see I think about some of the individuals on socials that are just tipping the apple cart. Like they're given every single little bit. And I read, I'm like, oh yeah, that's truth. That is truth. I don't know if I would have said that. Actually, I look at it and say I would have never said that. I wouldn't have sort of completely openly said that. But I'm finding more of those individuals that are talking that way are hiding behind an image on their profile. Like they're not actually naming themselves in it. And then you have sort of you and I, who are, I think, approaching this in an honest manner as well, talking about topics that still, other podcasts, I just haven't come across them. Maybe they are. Anyone listening out there, if there's other podcasts like mine and Shid's, drop me a line, send us the link. I would like to hear it, where there's a rational, kind of sober look at what it means to be in education. I would love to connect with some of those peeps and see how they're talking as well. So where I was going with the Twitter profile, though, is that I would rather have my face attached to the conversation and have that level of transparency. Now, I will say because I don't know who's behind the profiles, I don't know their purpose. So these anonymous profiles, I don't know who's behind there. I don't know what their level of safety is. I don't know what their level of risk might be. I know for me, where I'll take the risk is being in the room with my conversation that other people can find. And I guess I will, so someone could find me and talk to me. Do I push as hard and completely reveal? No, I don't. There's stuff that I still keep hidden. There's stuff that I keep hitting. Are they things the stuff that I keep hidden that bother me? Am I working on them in my own way? Yes. I'm pushing, I'm talking, I'm connecting. I go back to a conversation I had with an administrator maybe 6 years ago, when they came across my Chasing Squirrels podcast and asked me flat out, are we allowed to talk about these things? So this is 6 years ago. And all that I was talking about on the podcast, if I go back to 6 years, like I had a really static approach to podcasting, very highly structured, questions ahead of time, really an an ear for probably more academic type conversations, purely focused on the school-based experience of teachers. So it was a fairly safe approach to podcasting and talking about education. For me, it was safe, what I felt safe to do. So this is what the sample that this administrator was listening to. And it sticks with me because that question around, are we allowed to? I think many people right now are kind of wrestling with that, what that means. And I think in 6 years, I see a lot more people stepping up and pushing back, engaging with their union, engaging in protest, engaging with community members, speaking their mind, speaking their truth. And the only thing that kind of rattles me a little bit about that is that I would have thought that that would have put more pressure, let's say, on the individuals. Like if some of the people that are stepping up and speaking out are a part of oppressed groups, I don't know if we've seen change relative to the number of people that are now speaking out. Because I feel right now there's a whole lot of people that have podcasts, and there's a whole lot more people that are speaking out more directly on socials. So it just makes me think about where the power is and how strong that might be and how protected that power might be. It also makes me think about my own leadership path, which I feel is sort of changing frequently, as in, what is it that I want to be doing with my what is it that I want to be doing as a leader in the school?
I'm glad that you landed there for two reasons. Number one, I want to check in with you about your PQP course, because I feel like since you've started, so much has been going on with our professional lives and in our personal lives that we haven't really landed too much on that. I know the other day in a conversation you and I had, you mentioned homework. But other than that, I was like, holy cow, I keep forgetting that you are taking an AQ right now. And not just any AQ, but the PQP, which is, it's kind of hardcore. And then the other thing I wanted to say to you about that, where you landed, is I get to participate in a leadership town hall activity in April. And I was asked if I could write a brief leadership description around my experience. And my brief write-up ended with, basically, I have no idea where leadership fits inside of me right now. I have no idea. I can tell you where it started and what I was interested in when it started. But 20 years later, I'm literally sitting here trying to figure it out. And because all kinds of things have changed, right? The experiences that made me think that school leadership was a place where I wanted to be has shifted so much in the job that I had at the time, and in the work that I was doing in the middle, and the work I'm doing now. And not only the work I'm doing now as a teacher, but like my identity. Who am I? And that question, who am I? There's a trick answer. And I think the trick answer is the answer I want to give initially about who I am. Because as you said earlier, you made a comment about, I can't remember the comment you made, but it reminds me of what I'm thinking right now, which is how I've been programmed may have been done in a way to keep secret all the negative things that exist that I'm not supposed to know about. I was programmed to not see those things.
Well, I think that's what that administrator was touching upon. They had this kind of moment of revelation. I took it two ways. I took it as in permission seeking, but I also kind of took it as the individual wrestling with the obligation of talking about our practice, like more rhetorical. Like, are we able to? As in, there's the two parts of it. are we legal, is it legally possible, but are we able, I think this person was also asking, like, are we able, as in, do we have the skills to talk about it? Do we have the actual fluency to talk about it out loud, not just the permission, someone giving us permission to? And you and I have long walked away, like we're not in that zone. I don't think we've been in that zone for a long time about seeking permission for us to have these conversations. Like I don't think that's really a part of our kind of way anymore. Um, but I have a deep appreciation for that being kept in the conversation, because there are a ton of secrets and stuff that goes on inside of education that we see, that we may see it. The secrets is almost is a bad word, because it's too clandestine. It's just like any job. Like any job, you become a part of the operating system. And like the job, some people don't become a part of the operating system. They're not permitted into these spaces. They don't get the sort of opportunity to dig into some of the stuff that they see. And sometimes that's a leadership issue, and sometimes it's someone they just prefer not to. So they're not sticking around, they're not engaging, they're in and out of their classroom, they're just gone at the end of the day. That happens too. So I'm not getting too hemmed in by thinking about permission. I don't think either one of us are seeking it. Excuse me. But I'm having thoughts like your thoughts, that there was something, and I think there still is, part of my curiosity in in taking the PQPs was that, so what I told myself, and I still do, I love the puzzles of school. I love the puzzles of school. I love the challenges and the different things that are confusing, trying to work them out, trying to connect communities, like all the stuff that are just always, I think, a part of working in a big corporation. Like it's a big bureaucracy, school, yeah, education. I like those. I enjoy the human element of it. I love the bureaucratic part of it. I dig the paperwork. I like the legislation. Like there's just elements, and trying to decode that stuff, I really do like. And when I started to take the PQPs, part of my intention in taking the PQPs was the idea of those puzzles become more interesting as you sort of move to different tables. And I at one point I did articulate it as, there's tables that happen up above my experience level right now as a teacher that I would like to be able to sit at. I would like to be there for some of those conversations. Saying, as I say those words now, I realize that's the privilege that I'm talking about here, and the entitlement that I'm talking about right now, that somehow I have a right to be at those tables. And that is I can't not hear myself that way. I just can't. I can't make it as simple as me deciding to be a part of these conversations, so it should be. It's not like that anymore. And I think this is where it becomes a little bit, I haven't really landed on what I want to do next. And I'm in the PQP asking myself, even as I'm doing the assignments, why am I doing these assignments? Not because I don't want to do them. I think where I'm at right now is I really do want to understand why should this be an important assignment for my future position in leadership. And one of the things that's happening as I do these assignments is I'm wondering to myself whether or not I even want to be a principal. There's something that's creeping up in the back of my mind that I haven't been able to crystallize yet. But what it's got me thinking about is that if I am working towards the values that I think are important in education. Does that also include me recognizing that there doesn't need to be another white principal, another old man white principal? And this is just, it's a question. If anyone listens to our podcast, this is not, it's not as much, it's not as much of an ethical crisis as a straight up just recognizing the privilege and position that I exist in. And as an aspiring leader, should I just be putting my energy into helping others that do really, really want to be there? Should I be spending my time supporting them? Now, this means I still need to have the courses because I need to understand the language, the lingo, the way that the system connections work. Like, I need to have that type of learning. And I think some of this is kind of, I'm also bringing into how much I'm enjoying working with a teacher candidate and helping them, offering up my experiences to them to help them get somewhere. I don't know. I don't have it. I'm just, there's courses that you take that have a very clear end game. If you're taking if you're taking your part 3 of the AQs, you're looking towards leadership. That's what the specialist is about. If you take just a single session of something, you're looking to improve in that one targeted area. If you take PQPs, you can say, it's just fantastic professional development, but it is directive. Like, you're going somewhere with that information, and the system will see you with that information, with those, those qualifications. It also made me wonder if this is what's making me take it so slow and not jumping in and doing my practicum right away. Because had I completed my practicum this school year, and I'll be finished this PQP in May, sorry. Like, I'm a potential candidate. And part of me is just like, what? It's a real jumbled answer. And I don't even remember where we started with that.
I like where you're ending with it. What you just said about teachers who take a part 1 AQ are looking to learn something more about the topic. Teachers who are taking the part 3 AQ are looking at the leadership around that topic. And this reminded me right away of what principals do these days, or at least in my board, when we're at that time now where we have to declare, the principals politely ask you to give them like your ranking, top 3 of what you'd like to teach next year.
Yeah, we had that too.
They also ask, are you intending on leaving this school?
Oh, really?
Well,
they asked that, eh?
I don't know if it's standard. I've seen it amongst a few principals that I've worked for. It's just like, what are your intentions? Please let me know. Are you looking for a move? What grades are you interested in teaching if you remain here? Stuff like that. And
you think people answer that?
Some do. And here, let's open the doors of EDU.
Of course.
So I've had friends who answer it honestly to a fault. And my response is, why would you tell them that you're interested in leaving? Well, because that's my interest. I said, yeah, that's your interest. So you teach grade 4 now, you probably get bumped. Somebody who's staying and wants to teach 4 could possibly now be kind of put in that position. And then when you get upset that you are no longer teaching around the area that you were interested in, you go talk to the administrator. They'll say, well, you said that you were interested in leaving. So I thought, okay, well, I'll help you go. But Joe Blow wants to move from grade 7 to 4. They want to try junior. So I figured that's a good move. You're leaving, Joe Blow's coming in. It's like there's all kinds of here again. So nobody wants to talk about the negative, right? It's great to let your principal know what you'd like to do next year because they need the information to staff the school. Okay, that's the positive. The negative is, okay, well, you said you were leaving and Joe Blow wants to do junior. So I moved Joe Blow to junior. Maybe I moved you to grade 7 thinking, well, you don't want to go or you want to go, so I'll have to end up filling that 7. Like, I've seen it work both ways. I've seen people say to the principal, I'm interested in leaving, and then there's a conversation, and the principal realizes that there's some things going on in the building that can be dealt with in an effective way to help this person either stay or decide that leaving really is what they're interested in. They need a move, they need a change for whatever reason. There's all kinds of positive and negative reasons to that. So that's cool. But yeah, I've had people come right out and say, and I'm like, why would you do that with this person? They don't have a track
I'm actually
record.
really surprised that the union hasn't jumped in on that particular question.
Well, I mean, you don't have to answer the question. I don't even know if the unions know what some of these things look like. I don't know if they know. That's a good
Hmm.
question. If I'm gonna leave, I'm not gonna put it in a piece of paper. I'm gonna go talk to my boss, depending
Hmm.
on who my boss is. So my current administrator, I I would have no problem sitting down and talking with him about my idea of wanting to go and really like preface it with and I'm not telling him now. It's March. I'll let him staff the building, tell everybody where he thinks they're going to be. And then when the postings come out, if I see something that really catches my eye, then I would go sit with him and say, hey, listen, I really am interested in this position. And then we can have a conversation about whether I apply or not. Like, I'd like to talk to him about it because I respect him that way. Well, I can tell you recently, the VP pool opened up in my board. And when I mentioned it to him, um, because he's busy, his head is spinning like most administrators are right now. But I said, hey, did you know that the VP application process opened up again? He said, no. Did you apply? And I said, no. He said, are you going to apply? And I said, probably not. He said, we need to talk. He's like, we need to talk. I'm like, when do you want to talk? He's like, tonight or tomorrow, but we need to talk now. I said, okay. So we ended up talking that night, and I explained to him my thinking around it. And I explained to him that I needed some more answers about the role that I feel I'm not getting, that I feel like um, information is, for whatever reason, is not being. I need more transparency, and I don't feel like I'm getting that. So I'm not going to apply to something that I'm not fully understanding. And so, his position was, well, go ahead and ask me the questions. I've been an administrator for a long time in this board, and just ask your questions, and I'll answer them. And so I asked the questions, and a lot of the answers were, well, traditionally this is what happens. And I'm like, well, that's great traditionally, but where are the black lines? Where's the perimeter? What can happen? What usually happens? And who has authority to make what happen? These are all the things that I'd like to know about. But anyway, so I know some people would never want to have that kind of conversation with their administrator, but it goes back to relationship, right? It goes back to I'm in a space where I can speak to my administrator honestly about stuff like that. I am feeling tired at my current school. I'm feeling, and I think part of that is COVID, right? Um, I wait for the postings, and if I see something that looks interesting to me, then I go have a conversation with my administrator. This one, but in other administrators, I've not talked about leaving. I've just applied for jobs, and then if I'm successful, I let the administrator know I applied for a job and I've been successful, and I've decided to take it. Now, sometimes they know, sometimes they don't. I've run the gamut here. I've applied for jobs, gotten them, and then told the administrator I'm leaving. I've applied for jobs, told the administrator I've applied for jobs, and then either left or not left.
Mhm.
And then there have been times where I've told my administrator right up front, it's time for me to go. I would like to go do this. And then they're like, okay, keep me updated on the process. So I've done all of it. I've talked to them about it before I even applied. And then I've told them, there have been some that I didn't even tell them that I'm leaving. I applied for the job. I got the job. And then I waited for the HR email that comes to me, the new principal and the old principal, saying, effective this day, this is what's happening with this person. So, I mean, which is the best situation? The best situation is to be able to sit down and talk to the principal before you go through the process, to talk about the process.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm looking at.
But just like what I was mentioning about the podcasts, not everyone feels that sense of safety and support. Not everyone thinks that the person that they're going to share that information with will work in their best interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I won't say either way. I tend to fall on a similar side that you do. I tend to have constant discussions about my intentions, but when I sort of shop slow and then buy fast. So I'll spend a lot of time thinking and talking and thinking and talking. And as it gets closer and closer to decision time, I kind of hold my cards a little bit closer to my chest. And then I'll secure, like you, the next step. I mean, my family, a couple close friends will know what I'm working on. But apart from that, I'm not saying much. So, and I've kind of operated that way with all of my transitions so far. So, I think safety in that's a big part of it. I think safety is a very big part of it. People wanting to know that they can still remain in good stead while they consider, other opportunities. So, there we go. Podcast done.
Do you have your art ready?
No. Are we actually, we're clocking out?
I'm not. I'm good to go. I just wondered if I think, how much more time do you need for your art? Let's see if we can do a little bit of planning here, which we rarely do.
I'm coloring in the lines now.
Well, you and I were both kind of talking about leaving at a particular time, and we still have.
What time is it?
It's 10:03.
Okay, so we're still sort of good, eh?
We're good. I just wanted to check in.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think let's if we can, just as far as the inside kind of getting to the outside. Mm-hmm. I want to can I land on one more space?
Yeah.
So my teacher candidate finished up with me yesterday. So Corey's done now. He's we'll end up with 5 episodes that we're going to post up. Number 1 is posted up to Chasing Squirrels right now. And I'm really proud of him for wanting to engage in that. And I'm proud of him for recognizing the power of him engaging in it. He said yesterday when we were talking, just as he was leaving for the day, he said, I've really developed an appreciation for reflective practice. And I had the teacher smile. Like you just had the teacher moment. Like, I'm so happy that that's your takeaway. It makes me wonder about other teacher candidates in their placements, if if they get to that at the end, or if they feel like they had to grind it out. Like, did they have an experience where they feel like they can think differently now? And I'm happy for him. I'm happy for him that he had that, because I would say for me, it took me 10 years to figure out that reflective practice benefited me easily. 10 years. And there was no, and it could have happened sooner, but I didn't have any mentors that were engaging in it. No mentors. There was none of my colleagues, none of the people that I was looking up to ever talked about journaling or blogging. There was nobody in my circle that was doing that. So the fact that he got, like, that was part of his takeaway, that's awesome. That's awesome. That being said, the thing that was interesting with the last couple days is that we were constantly at my students' kitchen table. And I mentioned that to him. We were just involved in a lot of, we were deeply involved with a lot of our families, deeply involved with a lot of our families, and not involved as in just, what it means to be a special ed teacher, but involved as in really working through some big challenges with some of the families and how some of the students are doing school. So he got a chance to see that intersectionality. I had told him in the beginning, one of the early conversations, I said, being a resource teacher means you're also resourcing the family. And I really do believe that. Like, it's not as simple as saying you're just helping the kids. Sometimes you are very directly supporting the family in the way that they're thinking, and supporting sometimes other kids in the family, like, because if the brothers or sisters are also there, like, you just get drawn into a lot of these spaces, and to be effective in those spaces sometimes can be a real challenge. I had, in the middle of class or doing one-to-one sessions with students that are on my caseload, sometimes their kids are their little brothers and sisters are in the background. Mm-hmm. The family's all there, and you're at the kitchen table. And Corey got a big kind of heads up on what that means, and the honor, despite the fact, I'd go home, I'm just like, man, that was a heavy day. To be included as part of the families, I really do have, I appreciate it so much when the families can be, where we can be sort of that honest and work like that with the kids. But yeah, there was a few things that we worked through in this week that, it kind of reminded me of a little bit is that the week when I left the restaurant, and I've said this, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but back in the day, before I was a teacher, running restaurants, I was still managing while I was at teachers college. I would go to school during the day, and then at night, mortgage, life, had to pay bills, right? Mm-hmm. I would go to school during the day, and then I would go down and work the restaurant at night. I wasn't directly responsible for the kitchen anymore, but I was still one of the swing managers. And that last week was, even though I wasn't directly responsible for the kitchen anymore, that last week, it was like every single possible challenge that I had kind of learned to deal with, from staffing to equipment to suppliers to gnarly customers to dealing with the Eaton Center, to my own life, travel, parking. It was like I was feeling the test. It was like the universe was kind of saying, get ready for this shift, Clef. And they were sort of testing me and testing the skills that I'd developed there. That's what this past week was a little bit. And maybe that was the universe transitioning Corey out of his teacher candidacy with me, because we had lots of conversation. We had a lot of good pedagogical, classroom, relational, generative moments leading up to this past week. But this past week was just one day after another
Hmm.
of a deep and challenging challenge of practice. So it was cool that he was able to be a part of that. Um, and he got one day. He got one day with the students. That was yesterday because that was our first day in face to face, the first rotation where I was seeing these students. So he got one class. And what was fascinating about that, he wanted to talk about a lot of stuff. But my one question to him, and this is going really random, but I like this question. Um, I asked him, who in the class did you not build a relationship with? So based on all the work that, because he had been teaching digitally, I
Hmm.
said, but you only had one day with them. I said, now that they're gone, we were with them for 150 minutes. Who do you wish you had done a better job of building a relationship with? And he was able to say, he's like, he's scanning around the room because every kid has their set spots. And then he's like, as soon as he started to point, it was the kids that I saw he just didn't build with. He didn't get there. So this whole starting thing, I think, was more about being at the kitchen table. Sometimes it can be auspicious, sometimes it can be painful, sometimes it can be just joyful because you can see how the relationship with the family is helping the kid. Sometimes it can be scary because you can see how the relationship with the family isn't helping the kid.
Hmm.
But this past week was all about sitting at the kitchen table.
What's interesting about that, this last stint that I had virtually for about 2 weeks, we were virtually online while the physical building was closed. I noticed a lot of siblings with my students. And sometimes it was easy and sometimes it was hard. I was working with one student one time and we were doing math, and she's talking to me, and I hear in the background her little sister singing the alphabet song. And two things are happening at the same time, right? The sister's singing the alphabet song and my student's talking math. And we had hit a point where um, my student was really struggling with the math. So I just started singing the alphabet song. I jumped right into where the sister was. And as I'm singing, it goes silent on their end. And then I get to the end where you sing, "Won't you sing with me?" And I adapted it and used my student's name in there. And then I just hear people laughing. Not only did the kids laugh, but I heard adults laughing. So I'm assuming it was the parents. And I'm like, I think we need a little bit of that. And then
Yeah.
and then it was just interesting to me because I don't know, 30 seconds before any of that happened, it's just me and the kid. I don't, nothing else exists. But then I realize, oh my goodness, the sister's there singing. And then when everybody laughed, it was a bunch of people. So I'm over here sitting in this room teaching, and on the other end could be chaos. It is sometimes. Sometimes some of my students turn on their microphone and it is chaos because there's two other kids listening to their teachers, and I hear a TV in the background and I hear adults talking in the background. And I'm like, holy cow, how can anybody concentrate in that environment? And then it gives me a little taste of, it opens the doors to their homes, right? I get to see what's happening behind those closed doors because I'm sitting here. My wife's at work, my youngest is at work, my oldest is doing his high school somewhere in the house. So it's quiet, right? Like it's quiet. I have full-fledged internet dedicated to my teaching. I can yell as loud as I want. I can do whatever I want. There's nobody here. When I stop talking, I don't have a kid or an adult sitting beside me talking to their teacher, but my students do. And then it gives me a taste, right? Sometimes I need that. I need that taste of what's behind the doors so that I can adapt. I can be like I can have some compassion when I run out of it, type of thing, right?
Hmm.
I can have some patience when I feel I have none left. All these things are very important. And sometimes I look for those things. Like now that we were back at school Thursday and Friday, I was checking in with my kids. I was checking in. I was like, so what's, how are things at home? You, do you think your parents are happy that you're back at school? And just like, I want to hear from the kids, right? And, some are like, my mom said she was going to miss me. She got used to having me around. Other kids are saying, yeah, my mom couldn't wait for me to come back because like me and my brothers were driving her nuts. I'm like, I need to hear this. This is good to hear, you know? Um, and, you know, I was really happy to jump back into school on a Thursday and Friday. I was really happy. I felt like it was going to be a taste of what to expect. And then I get a weekend to reflect and to plan. And the taste was, it was good to see my kids face to face. It's funny. It's good to remember what it's like to teach face to face. And I told my kids again, we're going to hold on to a lot of the digital stuff that we do. We're going to keep doing the digital stuff in the room.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not letting go of that because I've told you and I've told other people that I keep losing a piece of myself every time I switch modes. I lose something of me, and I'm not even sure how to explain any of that, but I feel like I lose myself. So I told them I'm not letting go of the digital. We have to maintain it because I foresee that this switching is going to continue and we all need to stay sharp. And now that we've
Yep,
done it, we know what sharp looks like. So
you do.
let's stay sharp. Um, and like again, I didn't get planning time on Friday. I got it Thursday. But no planning time on Friday. And I suspect this will continue next week. So knowing that, again, am I happy? No, but I've got a couple of days to kind of to think about and to plan for not getting my planning time this coming week. I've got some ideas. I can put some things in motion so that when I hear that announcement in the morning, I'm not sitting there thinking, okay, what do I need to do to fill that time?
Yeah,
And I know I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. When you've been a teacher for as long as we have, you just do stuff. Like it's not like you don't know what to do. It's just one of those moments where it's like, oh, that wasn't part of my plan, but it is now. So let me quickly think of what can I roll in that will work. Well, I'd like to get ahead of that a little bit. I'd like to have some ideas so that when I do hear that announcement in the morning, basically I shift from plan A to plan B. Plan B is already created, so it's not like I have to. It's just I just switch gears and go. So I'm trying to be innovative. I'm trying to be efficient. I'm trying to get ahead of that so that my emotions don't get the best of me because when you're not prepared for that and you hear it, it hurts. And yesterday when I was talking to my teaching partner, who I never really see, but the bell rang, so we were both going down the stairs to pick up our kids, and I said to her, "How are you doing with no planning time today?" And she said, "Today was my double planning time." So I'm like, "Oh." Like, "Oh shoot." Like it hurts double for her because she's supposed to have two periods of prep on Fridays and now she's not getting any of them. So I said, "I'm really sorry. Do you need anything?" And she's like, "No, I'm good now." It's the now word, right? Because she wasn't good when she heard the announcement. She's good. "I'm good now." I said, "Okay, well, let me know. Let me know because I'm doing a couple of things that you probably aren't, and it might be a nice way to lighten your day a little bit." Because like we did some art that was connected. You're gonna love this because my students, they laugh at me now. So I'm like, we're doing some art, and they go, "Is there any reading attached to it?"
ha,
And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Is there any writing attached to it?" Because they know it's not just art, right? And I'm like, "I got good news and bad news." They're like, "What?" I said, "We're doing art. And that's the good news. And the next part's going to be bad news for you, but it's not bad news for me." I said, "We are connecting religion and writing to it. So it's going to be like It's going to be like this whole process. It isn't just going to be the art. It's going to be the art connected with reflection, connected with some type of writing to show to other people what our art is about, right? Which is really cool because it's connected to Easter. So,
Yep.
we're having some fun. We're doing some stuff, but it's the backup plan. And it seems like what used to only need to pop up once in a while is now a daily thing. It's
Yeah.
now the norm is for me to have a backup plan for no planning time, because that's what's happening. And then if you want to take it to the next level, I also need to build in time to plan for the next day. So normally what happens when I get my prep time, I make sure I'm good for my afternoon and I make sure I'm good for the next day. So then when the next day comes, I revisit my afternoon and I revisit the next day. And if I'm on top of this, I'm constantly building capacity for the next day and maybe beyond a little bit. I can't go too far ahead. It doesn't work for me. And so what happens now is like, okay, so I've got a plan for that day with no planning, but what do I do about making sure I'm ready for the next day? Now, some people might say, well, just do it at home at night. Well, it's not that easy because I like to have the resources around me. I like to kind of know where to go to grab this or where to go to grab that.
Yeah.
Now, with the digital component, it becomes a little bit easier because like I'm doing a lot of stuff digitally. So I need to then go to a computer and make sure I know where to find the digital component. But that's also now like kind of a new fluency I'm getting. I need to become fluent with it because it's what I'm dealing with every day. But my wife said to me yesterday, she said, get used to the plan with no planning time, because that's what's happening. And don't bank on getting it back, because we don't know when it's going to come back. Like she said to me, you'll either be paid, like you'll be paid with money or you'll be paid with the time, but you have to plan for that time. So do you have a plan for that? And I'm just like, literally, I'm like, it's Friday, I'm out of gas and I'm just sitting there like a lump of, what. But these are good questions. And I have a weekend now to think about it. So I am thinking about all of that stuff and how can I best plan in a way that will relieve the stress and that feeling of, 2 minutes before school starts or half an hour into the day, you hear that announcement, and it's almost like that's the only announcement we hear. So, when an admin comes on,
Oh,
it's
it's
not,
like, you know what it is? It's
guess
like,
what? We've got 4 planning time teachers in the building. You're all getting your planning time back today. It's, hey, everybody, I just wanted to let you know so-and-so isn't available today.
I remember when I was a kid, maybe you had this too. I had this really old, crappy alarm clock. Really, it had a tone to it that even to this day, sometimes I hear this sound just out in the open air, and it's not my alarm clock anymore, right? But the thing that it would do is just before the alarm went off, there was a click, and I would wake up on the click just so I could turn off the alarm clock before it went off.
Right.
I'm starting to feel like that's what this is. Like you're past the trigger. You're past the triggering effect of being told the bad news. It's the whole process. You're completely been Pavloved into this moment that click comes on, certain person's voice is there, and you're like, it's just like you just start to feel yourself deflating. So.
Can of worms made with sweet
Secret.
Oh, sorry, with secret sauce. That's cool, man.
Can of worms. There's a whole lot of and that's a Costco size can. Costco size. The size on the paper is not relative to size in real life. The can of worms is not. Let it be said, the can of worms is not that small.
Right. It's the Seinfeld Beefarino can.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Saw that episode yesterday. Beefarino for Rusty the horse. It's good times.
I haven't watched that show in ages.
Well, thanks for another great episode of the Decoded Podcast, Chris.
Yep. Thanks for the chat, dude. Thanks for the chat.
Hopefully we're jumping in next week. Same time, same place.
Send up the bat signal. I'm there.
Oh, this would have been our March break.
I know. We didn't even get into that, eh?
No, we didn't. That's other things
That's
are
okay.
on the plate. But maybe next week we'll talk about what would have been the end of our March break.
Yeah, I do know, and I was mentioning this to Corey yesterday when we were in the front hall just welcoming the kids in. I said, if you're seeing some people just looks like they're looking kind of low, it is that it chances are it is the kind of like the sobering realization that next week is not a break week. I noticed it as well at the school that I'm at. It's an early start school. It wasn't an early start this year. But despite that fact, people were still, I saw their energy in what would have been the break week, which is like the first week of November. I'm looking around, I'm like, why is everyone just so, something's off? Mm-hmm. And I heard someone talking, I'm like, oh, and these are for the people that had been working at the school for a while. That would have been the week that people normally had off. So, bro, next week, be gentle with yourself and others, you know, find a little compassion for yourself too, because you're going to see people next week. I'm guessing they'll be a little bit shorter. There'll be some edge there. Not everyone's going to pack it down. Not everyone's just going to pack it down. People are going to be openly sharing their.
And with the no planning time, if that's the reality next week, it's going to be a little more difficult, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'll update you next week.
Peace, man. Ciao.
Same to you.